Okay, it's still ceremony day. We just dropped off a care package for these guys. I don't think they did anything today, which is fine. I mean, they work 7 days a week. I think they took today off because we were screwing up their work site. This one, and for those of you who don't know, this is a bottle of whiskey, is going to these guys, but despite us interfering all day, getting in their way, they got all those rebar columns stood in place, and they've got the concrete truck here already, concreting them in. So we're going to go take a look at that. Yeah, these are done already. We've only been gone 2 hours, maybe, not even 2 hours. Well, I think they're down to the last row. I'm not going to walk to all of them, but I imagine they're working their way across. Duke's still here, getting it done. So if they only pour them to there, then they can square them up later because there's a lot of flex left in them. Look how wet that concrete is. Shaking my head. You guys in the west, hold your breath. And it's just like water. Oh my God. That one looks very wet too. These don't look too bad. Now those two, it must be this truck because look at that, it's cracking already. It's not really cracking, but it's cracking. At least they're using a damn vibrator. Wouldn't think they'd need to when they're pouring water in there. I hate seeing it. I'm just going to walk away. Normally they leave this ceremony stuff on here until they get ready to encase those columns in concrete, which will be probably a week away yet at least. As I said before, they'll concrete these. I think they will encase these up to the bottom of the, I keep calling them foundations, but I think they call them beams over here. The beams that the walls sit on. I think they'll pour them up to there, then they'll put in the forms, shuttering, whatever you want to call it, for the beams. They'll pour the beams, and then from there they'll re-shutter or form these columns up as high as they need to go, and then pour them on top of the beams. God, I hate to see concrete that wet, man. It's just ridiculous. There's no need for it. I was thinking about getting a video shot of that concrete coming down the slide out of the truck, but I'd probably need a high-speed camera to even catch what it is going by. Oh my God, things are getting deformed in Paradise. And this stuff isn't even 16 hours old. They're pulling the fans off. They just got poured at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and it's 8:30 a.m. now. These have been sitting for 2 days. Look at that. That ain't worth a shit. Steel's exposed. And a big gap in there. Look at that. They should have been using a vibrator. You can tell they weren't. None of it. All of that. Oh. No good, man. No good. Okay, mentally preparing to be disappointed. I'm going to walk over here and check some of these stays now that they got the rest of the forms off. We saw the first few, but I will say they poured those when I was not here. Oh, these are the footprints that were by my Salah. I seen these footprints by my Salah this morning. I was wondering who it was. It's one of these guys. I was not here for any of this here. up to about, oh, where was I? I think they're over here in this corner somewhere when I showed up. Imagine that. Look at these. This is, I was here for these, and I just said it. I have not seen these yet. These are the ones I was here when they poured them. That one's a little rough, but nothing like those ones back there. A little bit at the bottom of there. The ends of every one of these are going to be like this. I'm not worried about that. That's where that post is. Look at that. That one, but then again, it's the end. Amazing what they look like when I'm here compared to when I was not here. That tells you something, right? That tells you something. So these guys know what to do. They're just not doing it. These are really green yet. You can see the corners are soft on them yet. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. But the main thing is you don't put weight on it until that concrete sets. You're supposed to wait, what is it, some silly 28 days or something, but unless you're putting a full load on it, you don't have to worry about it. And there won't be a full load on this for months. But yeah, this is somewhere right in here is where they were pouring when I showed up. And it's just absolutely stunning, the difference. And I said it when I walked up here without looking at these. Now we've already contacted the builder. The builder said he'd get a hold of the contractor and have them, basically they're going to skim coat it. And with these, I was telling Sampit, this is different because these aren't really carrying a load like these columns will. These are encasing the steel, and it's reinforcing the steel, but it's encasing the steel. But the thing is you've seen in some of those pictures, the steel is exposed. That gets wet, it's just going to rust. And you've lost everything you put in it. But they're going to skim coat it, which is fine, because that will cover up the steel and keep it from rusting. And that's the important part of these arms on these stays. Yeah, this is the boss. The contractor called him. I'm going to talk to him. All right, so I mentioned that last video that my birthday's next month. I'll be turning the big 6-0, right? So that means I wasn't born last night. So I'm walking around here. They got all these footings. No, not over there. All these footings here. They got all the forms off. You see the forms laying out here, right? For some reason, they decided to bury this one. You tell me what I should think. But what I thought was going to happen is they would pour those up to where the bottom of the beam is that sits basically at ground level. And then that beam was supposed to be 50 centimeters up to the floor. And they would pour that on top of wherever they pour this column to. So they would pour the column up and put the steel like this through this steel and then pour the beam horizontal through the column. So everything's tied together. And then once the beam is set, then they would go ahead and start pouring the column on top of it. Comes the boss man, we'll ask him if I can. CPAC? Beam? Up here? Or down here?
Up.
Here? Or here? Beam. CPAC? Oh, beam from here down?
Up.
Okay. So that mark's going to be the top of the beam or the line. So maybe what they'll do is they'll just partially fill this to leave the 50 centimeters. I'm not sure. We'll see. All right? Hasip, okay. Yeah, so it is. It's going to be a 50 centimeter beam. Okay. Okay, cup and cup. So he's doing what I thought. They're just going to partially fill that. They'll have a 50 centimeter beam. Katok cup. Ni hasip? Non? Somsip?
25 ครับ 25
Lipa?
ครับโรงรถพื้นโรงรถ25 เซน
Hasip? Over
รถ25 เซน 25
Over there?
ครับ
Yisip?
ครับ
Yeah, okay.
ครับ
Yeah, they got it. I want to make sure they had a 20 centimeter drop on that parking area. They got it. So this crew, they're starting to work on the steel work for the beam on the top that we've talked about forever. Oh, they've already patched up those. I didn't even see them do it. Of course, I fell asleep over there on the desk. They even did the ends. I wasn't even worried about those. So they're putting the steel up out of the top of there, and they'll basically, I assume everything when I talk here because I don't know anything for sure. But I assume that they will get that steel coming up out of there. They'll basically build a rebar cage like that down the full length of it. They'll form it in, and then they will pour a single beam all the way down, all the way down. But let me also say what I suspect will happen. Again, I assume, I don't know. Is every 2.5 meters they'll put another piece of rebar similar to that, sticking straight up 1 meter, because every 2.5 meters there needs to be a 1 meter tall fence post above the beam. So I assume they'll kind of do like we just looked at on that beam for the house, is they'll run the rebar straight up from here every 2.5 meters. Reminder, these pilings are 1.5 meters apart, but the fence post will be 2.5 meters apart. So every 2.5 meters they'll tie in a piece of steel like that to go up 1 meter for the post. I'll be honest, I feel better about this now. My biggest fear with what we've seen this morning is fear of the unknown. And the unknown is what I can't see on the bottom. As I said earlier, I wasn't here when they poured these. So I didn't get to look to make sure they had the dirt cleared under down to about here somewhere. I had checked all these and they were working over here when I left. When I come back, they were pouring concrete already and had already been down to somewhere down in this area. And originally, the whole plan was to have this all same level, so when you pull in with the car, you could jump out of your wheelchair, roll in there without having to go up a ramp. But in the end, we decided if we have to, in 20 years or 15 years or whenever one of us ends up in a wheelchair, we'll have to come back in and put a ramp in. The plan that didn't happen is better than no plan at all, I guess. And the reason I asked him about this height is because I assumed they were going to come over here and mark them. And I wanted to make sure we got it right the first time. Oh, these got little stubby forms on them. And maybe that's because this is lower. But they'll just come in here and they probably already centered them because these are nailed in so they can't shift side to side. But then they'll just come in with a level, make sure they're level down there, straight up and down, pour the concrete. And then when they get to the beam, they'll do it again. And when they get to the column, they'll do it again to make sure it's straight up and down all the way. Like right now, they won't worry about this top end because it can flop all over as long as that's centered. See, and I was trying to explain to Sompit the other day that in most of these situations, you're better asking the question before they do it. Even if you know the answer, you ask the question. Then if they don't give you the answer you're expecting, you can start asking more questions. It's much easier than say something like that when it's defective afterwards and then you go back and try to fix it. I mean, you don't have to question their motive or their intelligence or their ability. It's much easier to do it that way than to try to go back and fix something that's wrong later on, especially if you know. And that's what I'm trying to do when I get to a critical, what I feel is something critical, like this floor height. We don't want to get that wrong, right? Because I want that step down there for the reasons I said before. But it's easier to ask the question ahead of time, and even if it makes me look stupid, I don't care, because like I said, a lot of times I know the answer to the question. I'm just asking it to make sure I get the answer I'm looking for. And if they answer it right, you say, very good, and walk away. Everybody's happy. And if it's not, then you can continue questioning them. And if you still can't get the answer you want, then you call the boss and say, look, we were talking about this. I just want a clarification of what's going on so we don't have a problem later on. It's that simple, people. Let me tell you, this concrete pour that we just looked at earlier today, when we pulled the forms off, is a perfect example why you need to be on site on these builds. And if you don't understand what needs to happen, I suggest when you're getting ready to go through these phases, get on YouTube, get ahead of it, watch videos till you understand, or at least maybe not understand it, but you have a good concept of what needs to happen or should happen. Just my personal advice. I think we're looking good again. I'm almost happy, so I'm going to get back over to the office. Not much wind today, so it's pretty warm. It was, 38 degrees yesterday, which is right at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. and it's supposed to be the same today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And again, it's not that bad if you're in the shade, and especially if there's a breeze blowing. Today, I mean, it's almost dead calm. All right, so it looks like they're getting ready to mix some concrete over here, hand mix it, to put in these columns that are going to be underground and under the beam. But I want to try to establish something here real quick. Back to what I was talking about earlier, I'm going to ask this guy a question that hopefully I already know the answer to. Will you use the vibration machine on this concrete?
คุณจะใช้เครื่องสั่นกับคอนกรีตนี้หรือไม่
ใช่ครับใช้
Oh, okay. Yeah.
ครับ
Yeah.
ใช่ครับ
Okay. Cup kun cup. Yeah.
ครับ
Cup kun cup. Good. So what I just did is asked a question that I hopefully knew the answer to, but now he knows I'm going to be watching for it. He also knows what my expectation is. So as you can see here, they got these sticks wire tied to this form, and then tie the ground, which is holding the form square. Here's a better example. They got the ones tied to the ground, tied to the form, holding the form square, and then the one tied to the steel. As you can see, the steel is pretty much centered in that casting. So to me, that looks really good. One thing I will tell you that they did error on, and that's because these are pre-made. These should actually wrap back around here. Both of those. They should make a full wrap, not a full wrap, but at least a U around each of those. We're not in an earthquake zone, so I'm not worried about it. And as I assumed earlier, they're putting a rebar in similar to that. A little smaller diameter, it looks like. That will run all the way down there, all the way down there. So if you've been watching this build series since we started this fall, you probably recall my contractor, Duke, P&D House. He asked me one day, where we wanted the top of this fence around the outside of the property. It's supposed to be a half meter above grade up here. So he asked, where's that at? Because, there's nothing really to judge it by. So I just basically looked at the level of the dirt up here, knowing that it was extra high over there. And I explained that before, so I'm not going to do it again. So I went to that corner where it appeared to be close to the lowest point. About a half meter up on that power pole there, we put a mark. Theory being that any dirt we needed, I knew it was low here in the middle because it held water at the end of the year, rainy season. The theory being I could use this higher dirt here to pull out into here and level out to the lower point rather than bringing in and filling all the rest of it. Duke and I agreed on a point on that pole that's appeared to be around 50 centimeters above ground level. It was an arbitrary number, arbitrary level and mark. But both contractors started from that mark, because that mark was supposed to be 50 centimeters above grade to the top of that wall. Well, this house is supposed to be 50 centimeters above grade also. So I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, these guys used the same mark. So it's going to be interesting to see how close they come. And looking at it from here, if you look at that string line going across there and that board and the top of that rebar they just put on there, if you can see it in the camera, they're going to be pretty close. In theory, they should be, because like I said, the floor of the house is supposed to be 50 centimeters above grade. I don't know which one that is, Rocky or Cocky. I didn't see it. Okay, so they're using the vibrating machine, but I can't say I'm impressed with how much they're using it. Let's see how long they run this vibrator. One thing I told Sumpit this morning, one of the problems this fence crew had is their aggregate in the concrete was too big to fit through some of that mesh that they put in there. But you can order different size aggregate, so that's on them too. The aggregate that these guys have over there in that pile behind the guy in the blue shirt down on the knees looks like a good size. It looks like about a half-inch aggregate. Oh, there he goes. Here he goes. He's looking over here to see if I'm watching. They both looked. All right, a chance to redeem yourself here, buddy. Come on, give me 5 seconds. 1001, 1002. Which tells you they're only doing it because I said something and I'm watching. All right, so you all just saw how I kind of manipulated a result by asking a question. So I'm sitting here watching these guys and running this whole thing through my mind. It's typical for ties to mix wet concrete, and it's typical for them to not use a vibrator. I'm starting to second guess whether I did the right thing right there. And here's why. Here's what I'm thinking. As we know, we mix sand, rock, mortar mix, and water to make concrete. So think about the rocks. If you go over there to that pile, grab a rock, walk over here and throw it in the pond, what happens to that rock? Sinks all the way to the bottom. Now, if you think about a wet concrete mix, what's going to happen? If it's too wet, the rocks are going to immediately just settle through it. And that's one of the problems with having wet concrete. But I'm afraid I just magnified that problem, because if it's that soupy and they put a vibrator in, it's just going to shake those rocks right to the bottom. So I don't know. I'm sitting here second guessing myself. And I'm being honest, folks. I'm keeping it real, but I don't know. I don't know what's right. I mean, I know what's right, but I can't get them to mix the concrete drier. But that should be a drier concrete mix, and I'm watching them. It's just slop, like hog slop. But that's what should happen. It should be a drier mix and then run the vibrator. But I don't know. I've got mixed emotions about the whole thing.
All right, it's another beautiful morning in paradise. So they've poured these columns up to the bottom of where the beam will go, the beam that will support the walls in the house. And they poured those yesterday afternoon, and they're pulled the forms out already. I bought a water sample kit from China. And I want to test that well water to see what it looks like. I'm going to drag this hose over there by the switch where I can operate it. So the first thing I'm going to do is triple rinse this, and then we'll just fill it with water. We'll pull out one of these papers and sample it. But I'm going to do it over here where I don't get water all over this walkway. These guys. I just shake my head, man. That's all I can do. Give it about 3 or 4 seconds, 5 seconds, I think it said. So then on the side of the bottle, this particular sampling method, you can see they have green boxes around the different shades. If it's in the green, it's good. So I'm going to call that one somewhere between the first one and the second one, so we're getting close. But that's alkalinity, which isn't huge. pH isn't huge. Cyanuric acid, not a big deal. Carbonate, not a big deal. Hardness, not a big deal. It is over there toward the very hard, which should be expected coming out of the ground because it's all minerals, right? These next 5 or 6, whatever they all are, I ain't going to read them all, but they're all good. Lead is good. Copper's good. Mercury's good. Fluoride is good. So the only thing that might be questionable is that alkalinity. It's just somewhere between 0 and 40, and 40 to 100 is good. So I'm telling you right now, you could drink this water the way it is. But I will test it again. But this is good, 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 good through there. And of course, the hardness, there is no range on it. It's just telling you how hard it is. But I knew that would be bad just because it's coming out of the ground and all the mineral and dirt down there. So hardness is the only thing that's really out to lunch. I'm going to test another strip of this alkalinity just to see what it comes out at. I'm not sure why, but it stepped up to about 80, which is good. It's in the good range now. This one's right in here somewhere. That one's right in here somewhere, right in the middle of the range. Hardness is still hard. All the white ones are white. I didn't dip it all the way to the bottom. So I don't know why. I guess I could have just to check them all again, and we will. So I'm curious about that alkalinity. We're going to test this again. I'm going to leave it in there a little bit longer. But as long as it gets saturated, that's all that matters. It isn't going to really affect the results. We used to use these a lot in the meat industry because we were always testing something, it seemed like. So these middle ones are all still white, so I'm going to put my finger there. So now you can see the alkalinity is up in the green now. So we're good. This one is probably closer into the 7 range, so it's good for the pH. Cyanuric acid, whatever that is good. It's 0. Carbonate is about 80, which is where it needs to be. Good. Hardness is still hard. Chlorine, of course, there's no chlorine in it because it's fresh out of the ground and it's white, so it's 0. All these are 0. Free chlorine, bromine, nitrate, nitrite, iron, chromium, lead, 0, copper, 0, mercury, 0, fluoride, basically 0. So this water is drinkable just the way it is. The only thing that's off is the hardness, and that ain't going to hurt you. Just minerals in the water, which would be expected in a, as I said, in a well. So we're good. So with these tests done, there's only 2 tests left. One of them, the sniff test. It smells okay. The final one, take a drink. Tastes like water. Alright. Okay, so the water smelled okay, and it tasted okay. It did taste, I'm going to be honest, a little bit minerally, if you know what I mean. If you ever drank mineral water from a store, it has a little bit of a different taste to it. But I'm 100% confident it's safe to drink. And if I'm sick in 6 hours or die in 6 hours, you might want to start with that well. Good morning, everyone, from my paradise in Thailand. As you can see, I did not die. I did not get sick. I survived my water test yesterday. But I need to put out a little CMA disclaimer. I don't recommend anybody try what I did. Okay, those test strips don't test for bacteria. Okay, so I know this well was sanitized by me personally, and it was immediately sealed, so I know there's no contaminants in it other than what's coming through the ground. And being a deep well, it's unlikely it will get contaminated as long as it's sealed. Shallow wells much more susceptible to contamination, so under no means would I even consider drinking out of a shallow well. But having tested it and having sanitized it myself, that was why I drank it yesterday, and honestly, nothing. Having said that, I want to thank all the new subscribers, all the long-term subscribers. Counts climbing every day, far exceeding my expectations. And I just want to thank everybody for watching our videos from Paradise in Thailand.